It's break time. Welcome to our newest episode. It's your co-host, Rissy,
Hey.
and yours truly, Kaninja. Today, Rissy and I have a special guest, our best friend, Bri.
Hi.
So she's going to help us talk about today's topic, and it's going to be about COVID long haulers. Before we jump in, Bri, did you want to say anything? Say hi to our break room buddies. I know you've been on here a previous episode.
Yeah. Hi again. I don't really have much to say at this moment.
So, break room buddies, if you guys don't remember, Bri was our special guest on our Fad Diets episode. It was part of our season one on the podcast. So, but now you can see her lovely face. Yeah. So awesome. Thanks, Bri, for joining us.
Of course.
COVID long haulers. The long haulers for COVID. What do you guys think that is? Without reading the notes.
I legit, if I'm being honest, before I read the notes, I thought it was a person that was working during COVID. That was my best educated guess.
That's a really good guess. My guess was someone where COVID kept just messing with them. It's just everything was because they lost their job, COVID. They lost their wife, COVID. Lost their COVID. It was just always and it's oh, I tried to apply for unemployment, but because of the new change of COVID, I didn't qualify COVID. That's what I said. Oh, this is just a bad day every day.
Because
COVID.
It was the Rona. So you guys aren't too far. I mean, well, I'll be nice.
They were educated guesses.
That's a very good educated guesses. COVID long haulers basically mean, or in other words, post-COVID syndrome. It basically means that with people who have gotten COVID, regardless of how mild or severe the symptoms are, that means that basically they either continue to test positive after their symptoms, or they actually end up having long-term effects from COVID. So COVID actually takes over, not really takes over, but really changes your body. So people who are healthy can, let's say, run 10 miles one day, gets COVID, and the next day they can hardly walk upstairs. So it totally changes all of their whole symptom, basically. But so in other words, so they basically, as we all know, when it comes to COVID symptoms, it lasts about 2 weeks or so. Now it can range from very mild symptoms to very severe symptoms, as in death. So when people end up
sorry.
death.
Or a severe symptom. We're what's severe? Death.
Example. Oh man. So basically that's kind of the gist of it. So what do you guys think?
I mean, oh God, I was laughing too hard. I do believe that to me, because of all the kind of the debates and everything, I do believe that is a true post-COVID syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel that it does change your body because it stays with you, and right now it continues to mutate. It keeps changing. There's different strands. So what would make it stop changing with you right now?
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think it does become part of your genes, your genetics at some point. And I hate that. I hate that people who test positive, who it just lingers. Like people with bad flu, bad cold. For some people it takes 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
You might see your sniffle, be down for the count, come back 2 days, nothing happened. And then you have some people who when they get sick with a cold, they're down for 2 weeks. I've seen that. So I don't see why COVID wouldn't follow kind of the same outline or same characteristics.
Right. And the only difference though with that is that even if it lasts 2 weeks with cold, at one point you will get better. With a lot of these long haulers, they don't know when or if they will get better. They haven't seen a sign of them actually getting better, especially the more severe ones. So, and I know a few people who have gotten COVID, and after the symptoms is very, very mild, but they tested positive for a good 2 months after symptoms were done. But they didn't have any issues, which was good, but that was kind of the situation at hand. Bri, what do you think?
I think due to the newness of everything right now, I don't think we'll ever know for sure. Because this could be a long-term thing. This could be something where if someone does become a long hauler, it might last them 3 months. It might last them 4 months, depending on, and I think it's really based on not only the strand or the variant you get, but also your genetics, your genetic code, your immune system, as simple as that, really. But I'm just thinking, it's really hard to say, because I like said, I agree with what she said, some people it takes 2 weeks to get over a simple cold, and some people it takes 3 days. So I know with sinus infections, it hits you out of nowhere, and it takes some people 3 weeks to 2 months to just like wing that off. So I think my point is, because this is new, we will not know at least estimate amount of time when you can wing this off, or if this is a long-term situation that's going to stay with you the rest of your life.
So you're basically saying, because it's so new, we really don't know if this is truly long-term. We're thinking It's long-term now because, well, it's just kind of, it's long-term as far as 6 months. Yeah, it's long now, but not really. So,
yeah.
Okay.
You know what? Because also, I don't know if you guys remember this. Early on with COVID, they were talking about the after effects of COVID in children, the multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children, where it was basically it was affecting different parts of the body, where it was affecting their heart, the children's heart, lungs, kidney, brain, skin, basically everything. But they broke it down and said all that stuff. And that was something where it was something associated with COVID, where that itself is a syndrome, but they saw a correlation with children who contracted COVID.
Right. Which is very interesting, because it's basically changing our DNA in one shape or form, because that's what they're kind of thinking too, is changing our DNA. So, and maybe that's how it is, and how it wasn't with the kids as well, because their bodies were different. Of course they haven't grown up, but because how COVID is and just how strong it is actually capable of changing our DNA and what we are able to do. And unfortunately for the worse. I find it interesting that, kind of going back to what we were talking about in our vaccine episode, is that the mRNA strain, or really mRNA vaccine, is the DNA of the coronavirus. So it's not the actual dead virus, it's the DNA of it. And then of course our cells would absorb that DNA and create the antibodies from that and get that genetic code. But what we're thinking is that the genetic code of COVID is actually changing our cells and actually creating these long-term effects that we haven't seen before, like what you mentioned with the kids. So that was very interesting.
And I looked at Harvard, and they talked about these long haulers, and they're talking about how that they're not infectious. I don't agree with that.
Why is that?
Because we have seen asymptomatic people can still spread COVID. So why wouldn't someone who's basically is continuing to test positive, doesn't have symptoms, how can they not be infectious?
Did they give a reasoning?
I didn't agree with it. I mean, it was short and sweet. It was so this is from Harvard University, and the question was a pandemic about the COVID long haulers, and the question was, are they infectious still? And from the interviewee, they are not infectious. And I'm like, bupkis. Most patients who have this initial improvement and then have this worsening of symptoms often go back and get retested because they're worried that they might have gotten infected again or could be infectious. All the patients I can think of who have done that have negative tests for their second test. So we, for the most part, can't detect any ongoing infection.
So basically they've tested negative, even though they still have the ongoing symptoms.
Right.
So that's probably, I can see why they think that they're not, contagious, because they're tested negative. But I can see also why you think that, like, nah, that's B.
Yeah, I mean, because think about it, it's Bri, well, you got something to say. I know Bri got something to say.
I don't. I'm just thinking.
Go ahead.
It's all very interesting stuff, because, like, even when it comes to the symptoms, with COVID or with the kids, or even just afterwards, even when you test negative, it's always typically the fatigue, shortness of breath, cough, joint pain, and chest pain. But then they also mentioned that other issues can include cognitive problems like difficulty concentrating, depression, muscle pain, head pain, rapid heart rate, and intermittent fever. Mm-hmm. So those are all the other kind of symptoms, where it's interesting because, like, when you get COVID, I don't think depression is one of the items, like one of the symptoms on there. I've been saying that is like a reaction or a response.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Bri, do you think that people who are long haulers are contagious?
Do I think that they're contagious?
Just a deal breaker.
That's a hard one. That's a really hard one. I plead the fifth on that one.
Oh, you cheat.
What I'm trying to think is, like, remember how back when they can't do that now? Remember back in with, like, health insurance, mm-hmm. where if you had, like, a pre-existing condition, like you had diabetes, heart disease, like things like that, you weren't covered or your premium was high. Mm-hmm. What do you think about, like, people who had COVID?
Ooh.
You go ahead, Bri. You go first.
I think that's gonna be like a government propaganda thing. Like, I really do.
You know what I'm saying? Like, kind of like how with smoking, right? Like how right now at my job, if you're a non-smoker, your premium's a little bit less.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if maybe if you had COVID, mm-hmm. your premium is going to be higher because they're unaware of the long-term effects.
Mm-hmm. At the same time, though, you don't have to disclose it.
Just a thought.
Say that again.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I was talking over you. I'm so sorry. I was saying, at the same time, though, there's not a lot of people are disclosing that medical information all the time. So it's going to be like, it might be a hit or miss on that.
There's also, I mean, I guess because of HIPAA, they can't really look into your medical history or anything along those lines. But if there is a claim, then they could look into that. I feel like if you do claim that you've had COVID, I do feel like they could totally use that against you, especially with these long hauler things. They're like, okay, well, it's going to be a pre-existing condition. You're going to have issues in the future because you have COVID because of these situations. So therefore, we're going to raise your rates. That's why they do it.
So that's what I was thinking. I was like, because I was looking, right, at how much of the world's population has caught COVID, right? Because not only, for example, the COVID long haulers, but again, it might be something where, remember 9/11 mm-hmm. and the first responders, how initially they were not sick, but years later, mm-hmm. they started getting all types of sickness, mm-hmm. where there was a whole global fund for them mm-hmm. for getting treatment and stuff. And so I was like, okay, we know kind of the roundabout numbers, right, of the first responders during 9/11. So I was like, okay, so how much of the percentage of the world's population has had COVID? And I'm on the coronavirus national information.us, so it's legit.
Not .com.
Right. And in global cases, there's been Lord have mercy. 175. Lord have mercy.
How many zeros?
Okay, 175 million. These and okay, 175, comma 960, comma 479. Tell me what that means.
That's one. You said 175. That's over 175 million. Over 175 million.
Okay, those are the global cases. For the
For
the global deaths related to COVID is 3,804,166. And that's just death. So I was like, okay, well, let's figure out US. US is a little bit more important. So I was like, because I live here.
Sorry, those Sweden and Hungarian people that listen to our podcast.
Yes. So I was like, okay, out of the US, we have 33 million cases. 33,461,982. So I'm like, that's a good enough. To me, I don't know. I guess I gotta look at the total population, but that's a lot of people. A lot of cases of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And that's reported. That's people who took the time and got tested. It's kind of like STDs, you know, like they say all these numbers, you like.
Making this editing gonna be a nightmare.
That number's probably low, like STDs and stuff.
So no, I mean that makes sense too. It's just like because a lot of people don't end up actually reporting that they've had COVID or anything along those lines. So really, at minimum, the United States is at 300 million cases. So if you really look at the cases and look at the insurance rates and how many long haulers that can also be a lot more. And so if you really take that in consideration, it could be a good case for a lot of insurance companies to actually raise the rates.
True. And that brings in more money.
Oh, of course. I mean, it's always about money.
It always is. Always.
So it's definitely ridiculous on how they're going to do that. But it just looks like a cash cow when it comes to, okay, well, you had COVID. That is a pre-existing condition, especially with this now.
Because it can pop up.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Like, hey, have you had this? Have you had the Pfizer?
Yeah.
Have you had the Moderna? And you're like, because right now, we already talked about this before with the vaccine itself. A lot of the insurance companies aren't covering it. If let's say you fall ill and die, unfortunately, if you got one of the vaccines because it's not FDA approved, they're not covering for you. At this moment, as of June, what day is it?
14th.
June 14th, 2021, they're not covering. So if anything changes, I'm saying this in June.
I mean, this is gonna come out like next week. So.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure. They're like, nah. But you know what I mean? Like it's because it's not FDA approved.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm thinking like, okay, they're showing like, you know, they're pushing getting vaccinated. We're actually donating vaccines overseas, and they're still not FDA approved.
But it takes years to get things FDA approved.
Yeah. Yes.
there's a lot of things.
For good reason. I mean, it don't matter because they be letting things fall through. Like I see my dog's food like enough water to be processed or something. That was like the first ingredient. I'm like, what does that mean?
Oh yeah, I mean they let a certain amount of like insects on your fruits to actually be bought. So that's why a lot of people say wash your fruit because there's gonna be insects on your fruit, and that's FDA approved. I mean, there's a little bit of protein.
Yeah, like put a little hair in your chest, you know, like that's what our forefathers did. Fine.
So pick yourself
George,
up.
Give me your favorite person. If George Washington can, you can too. All right.
But he couldn't. He couldn't do it. He didn't live long.
Oh, obviously, yeah.
You see his teeth.
Those wooden things.
Oh man. All right. So we are about to go on a break. But the next thing we're going to be talking about is some examples about the COVID long haulers, a little bit more about the COVID long haulers and kind of those symptoms as well, and about what it's really about. We're going to do some more discussion, what we think about it, what we think about the examples, and just kind of what would we do if we knew someone that was a long hauler, or if we were a long hauler, or really what could that impact others? We already talked about the insurance companies, but what other impacts do we think that could do for us or against us? But with that, we'll be back. And we're back. So basically, during the break, Bri had a pretty good insight when it comes to COVID and the long haulers. Bri, do you want to tell breaker bunnies?
Sure. So I was thinking, you know how when you're young, you get chickenpox, and then cases have shown that if you get it twice, that you're more likely as an adult to get shingles. So I'm wondering, this is just an analogy, but I'm wondering, will the same thing may occur for people who've had COVID? Years later, they might have some type of symptom that they've gotten from having COVID. So I'm wondering if that could happen with a long hauler.
I think so. I mean, it seems like it's already kind of wreaking havoc on the body. And I don't know the science behind chickenpox as to why if you get chickenpox, you're more likely to get shingles and so on and so forth. But I would assume it's, like you said, it's just kind of the same thing, the same relation, that it does something to your body, does something to your cells, where you're more susceptible to something worse or different later on in the future or now. So I guess if long haulers now, they would be even more susceptible than people who aren't long haulers now. You know, it depends on how severe you've gotten it. Rissy, what do you think?
Well, I think we're all doomed. Just doomed. So
go refer back to our conspiracy episode.
We're all just doomed. Sorry, just doomed. Everything. Well, because it's like first is COVID, right? Remember how it first came out and it was just a lot going on. Everyone was just trying to get a handle. First they said it was just affecting grandma, grandpa, and they said no, it's affecting everybody. Where, you know, the children, again, they have their own symptoms going on top of other symptoms. And then that's when they were like, hold on. There's asymptomatic people here who are infectious. So it's like more information with that.
Mm-hmm.
Then it said you can get into your eyeballs. Then you got information on that. I remember that. I don't know if anybody remembers that.
I remember that. I totally remember.
Okay. Then I heard they could be on the surface, like your Amazon package. Get
that Lysol spraying the packages.
You know what I mean? Like, it was just like, so you telling me I get a package from Amazon and it can happen? Yes, it sure can for 3 whole days. I remember 3 whole days. I was like, oh, the only reason I remember, because I was like, that was Jesus days. I was like, it took 3 whole Jesus days.
Jesus days.
I was like, oh, that's all.
I'm mad that you said those were Jesus days.
Jesus days. 3. So that's how I knew. I remember it was 3. So it's like now with what we know, then you're like, okay, you thought it calm, you know, numbers are getting down, type deal, things are slowing up. They're like, hey, we about to hit you. Oh, we're gonna hit you with something else. We're gonna hit you a new strain from England. Boom. You're like, huh? So they're like, nothing works. I was like, okay. So it's like, I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised,
right,
if years down the road or next week that they say, hey, if you've gotten COVID, you will most likely have these things. Like, for example, what Bri said about the chickenpox, how you're most likely to get the shingles. That, hey, if you have had COVID, you are most likely to have, I'm not trying to wish on nobody, but I'm just saying, like, just you're most likely to have this thing.
Right. Well, it's interesting too. I just remembered. So the reason why for chickenpox that you were most likely susceptible to getting shingles later on is because the chickenpox virus actually does not go away. It actually stays dormant within your body. So when you get older, your immune system goes down and it also evolves. And so it could actually go into shingles, and that's why you get it. So, and that's kind of, I can totally see that happening with COVID, because at least with the long haulers, it's actually staying dormant within your body, like these types of other diseases or viruses or so on and so forth. It just does not go away. And so, yeah, I mean, with that though, kind of going back to Rissy, what you were saying earlier, let's say if I had chickenpox yesterday and I don't have chickenpox anymore, but it's dormant, does that make me still contagious?
Yeah, get away from me.
So I had chickenpox when I was 3. Does that mean I'm contagious?
Like, no, but it's just like, I feel like there should be extra layer of caution. Like, it's like for some people can't get vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
And we already went through that of who cannot during our prior podcast of who can't. So they have to make extra precautions to, in lieu of that, right? In lieu of getting vaccinated, what other things do they need to do in order to, for them to stay safe and, be safe, everyone be safe. And you have to adjust. So I feel like for anyone who's contracted COVID and they are those long haulers, I think it's safe to say to keep them
in the cage. Keep them in a bubble. Get them away from Rissy. That's what she's saying.
From society, yeah. They put them in a boat, island, and they could just be in the same spit. Okay,
Isn't that what they did with leprosy?
Yeah, Jesus days, yeah.
Jesus days for leprosy? They put them on an island to let them die.
No, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like that is a concern. Mm-hmm. Because again, there's people who test positive. Like, what do you tell someone who doesn't feel symptoms and they test positive? What would you tell them?
They're asymptomatic. If they test positive, they're contagious. Right.
And then I did see how some long haulers, it's like, damn, you're like, so you can't they can't get rid of it. They just stay sick for a very, very extended time. And you're just like, damn. And it's like, so what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
exactly. Well, I know like the person that I've known that had tested positive for COVID, like for 2 months, the actual doctor said like after the 2 weeks or like after, I think it was after 2 weeks, after the 14 days, that they're no longer contagious, even though they're still testing positive, but they're no longer contagious. Like it's like
the thought process.
Well, it's like it's leftover cells from the back. It's like from the virus. They have leftover cells when they were testing, like in their sinuses and stuff like that. And so, but it's not like active cells.
So I needed to be treated like HIV, right? Like, you know how HIV, how you could be with someone who has HIV, but if their load is low enough,
mm-hmm.
it's undetectable.
Yeah.
They need to come with that test. That's the test they need to make.
So to make sure to see if the amount of virus they have is low enough where it will not be.
Hell yeah, because the test that we got now says you got it. Okay,
it's 0 or 1.
I mean, I'm just saying, like the test we got, like I don't understand all that science stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the test that we got is either yay or nay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But now they're talking about, well, it's the leftover. Y'all need to make a test.
Give me a percentage.
Make me a test that I can feel comfortable where I'm like, okay, so now you break it down to numbers, right? Like how when you get a baby and you want to make sure it's not yours, you want, what numbers do you want? You want 99.99. That's the numbers you want.
You want yes or no?
Yeah.
You want 99.9?
No, we want 99 because see this thing, because then it's a whole nother issue if they say like, oh, he's 57. You're like 57.
How does that work?
That's a cousin. That's a cousin, everybody. That's the cousin. That's why I need the number. You know what I'm saying? Like that's why I would like if they could make a test where you could go and actually say like, hey, this is amount of the virus that you have is this percentage, which the community has stated this is a safe number that considers you non-infectious.
Yeah, I wonder if I guess they don't do that with the COVID testing because I was thinking like I wonder if they do that with the PCR test, but no, I think they just if they detect it, then it's a yes and a not really a percentage like you're saying.
Bri, what do you think? You know, just put it out there if they're listening that hey, if we could have something right, so that they're long because I feel like there's more. You know what I mean? I feel like there's more. It's just some people never got tested. There are people who've never gotten tested,
right? Because they don't want to do the nose thing.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. That looked painful.
It's a little uncomfortable.
Painful. Like they shove it in. Like, I was like, you ain't gonna grease nothing or
you're inside your nostrils enough grease as it is.
Not the way they over here just ramming the shit in there. I saw it. Oh my God. And I see tears. I don't like pain.
So Bri, what are your thoughts on all this?
In response to Rissy, I would say what she's saying reminds me of like radiation. You know how like those old towns who've been bombed or like had like radiation exposure, and they tell you like in some parts of the city it's safe enough for you to live, in other parts is like no, it's too much radiation exposure. Same thing with other like brain scans and stuff like that. I would say I think it's a great idea, and I wish it could happen, but just the way they treat all other diseases right now outside of HIV, you probably won't get it. Like it probably won't.
I'll be a grandma is what you're saying. I'll be a grandma before they come up with something happen.
You'd probably be dead.
I think it would be great, but they don't even do it for like other things. They don't even do it to the flu or bronchitis or something. Like they don't do anything else that is contagious. So I'm just like, it's a great idea, but looking at our economy and how we run things right now, I don't think it's realistic.
I feel like if they found out that like if COVID, like with COVID long haulers, so if they found out like COVID never goes away within your body, and since it is deadly and it's detrimental, and it is basically as detrimental and deadly as HIV, and if they find out that it is also just as contagious as HIV, I feel like they would put that in that category. Because now they're saying it's not contagious. So they're saying like the risk level is probably very low, but if it is going to be in there for a long period of time, that makes sense. Because like the flu, you can get better from the flu. It's not staying within your system forever. But like with HIV or even herpes or anything along those lines, those stay in your system forever. So if they treated it like that because of those impact levels or risk levels, I think that would be at least more knowledge out there and just more precautions out there. Not just, hey, now we don't have to wear a mask because everyone's got a vaccine when they don't, and then this happens. So, oh man. So let's talk about some examples that we have here. So there's one example of a COVID long hauler. And I got this one from theprint.in. So I made sure it wasn't com, but I don't know if it's as credible as it is. But
it's a .in, like
I don't know, but it's not com. So
I don't know, but it's not .com. So hush it. Okay.
So this is in New York City. This woman named Tasha Clark, she tested positive for COVID-19 on April 8th, 2020. The Connecticut woman, now 41, was relieved that her symptoms at the time, she had diarrhea, sore throat, and body aches, didn't seem particularly severe. She never got a fever and wasn't hospitalized. And then she, so now after that, she now suffers from from disabling symptoms, including blowtorch-like nerve pain and loss of sensation in her arms and legs, spinal inflammation that makes it difficult to sit up straight, brain fog, dizziness, and soaring heart rate when she stands. She takes steroids and 9 other prescription medicines, including twice monthly infusions of immune therapy at a Yale University clinic to treat the neurological complications. This is after she no longer tested positive from COVID. What do you guys think of this?
That shit escalated so fast. Because that was 2020.
It was 2020.
Damn.
So just goes to show.
I feel like kind of like with 9/11, right? With first responders and how at first some weren't sick from all that building debris and the other harmful chemicals that was coming, in that fog, the fog that everyone knows about. And it's like, so what do we do? Like now, I'm just using her as an example, Miss Tasha, is like, so now we know, like, hey, maybe a minute, but she's gonna go through, her body's gonna unfortunately take a really deep turn, and she had COVID at one time, like, at one point in time. I'm just saying.
Bri, what do you think?
I think it goes back to my chickenpox theory. I think it really does relate to that, and it might unfold that way as we get older and as, because when you think about it, COVID-19 is not going to be the only thing. Before you know, it's going to be something stronger out there. So, and then COVID just might be like something, it might be the new flu for all we know, because it's going to take years. I mean, think about when the first time the flu came out, nobody knew what was going on. People probably had symptoms left and right for months. So it could be the same case where the flu, it just might be another flu, or it could be worse. And it could have lasting effects, and it could just be part of the chickenpox theory that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. And this seems like just like that with the lasting effects, but just so much worse. I mean, these are worse effects than what she had when she was tested positive for COVID.
Right. And you would think it was the opposite, where she was sick as a dog and then maybe a little bit of this here and there. No.
Right. Exactly. And for it to like affect her mentally, the neurological complications are like what's more concerning to me, at least.
You know what's fascinating? It doesn't concern me as much, because one thing I've learned is that, especially when you've had a severe fever, it will mess with your mind. And it'll go straight to your head. So I feel like depending on how that affected her, I can totally see having neurological side effects from that.
I can see that now that you're saying that way. But I mean,
but she never got a fever.
Well, after the fact, she didn't have the fever during COVID, but she got intermittent fevers as part of the long hauler effects. So that's
like afterwards.
Yeah. So constant fevers go straight to your head.
Right, exactly. I mean, I guess I can kind of see that. I was thinking more or less like neurological is your head, but also like your nervous system, and
a lot of people, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just saying like just more or less like your limbs, like they could be shaking, they could just age your body times 10 for what you are during that time. Go ahead, Rissy.
No, right. Because right now, when I think of COVID, I'm thinking fever, I'm thinking breathing issues, respiratory. I'm not thinking about heart. I'm not thinking about my arms and legs. Like that's something where someone might think it's something else. Like it was something, because, when you age, things just naturally break down. And you might think, oh, I just have, Alzheimer's because my family unfortunately have they're saying that I have it. My grandma had, like, it's in my family, we have Alzheimer's. This is just part of just the process of life. When they're like, hey, it could have been related to COVID.
Right. So you're thinking that maybe it could have been it could be genetically passed down too.
Mm-hmm.
The grandparents or anything along those lines.
You're like, no, like that's
yeah.
I agree with that. I agree with that. But I also want to say that I think oftentimes we forget that colds and diseases and all those things affect our entire body. But sometimes it affects certain persons way more than others.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, that brain fog. I'm not thinking brain fog.
Yeah.
I mean, that's obviously that's more, that's for her, like this particular person. But still, you're like, I wouldn't even think to connect me having a brain fog or dizziness after I've tested negative for COVID. I wouldn't even think that. And I think there should be more information for people to not, there should be more information for people to kind of like, like aftercare. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. Aftercare, like more information that, okay, after you've tested positive, you went through whatever, you let it run its course, and now you came back and you tested negative. Hey, here's some information.
That'd be great to actually pass out and be like, be on the lookout for these type of symptoms, because then you could be having post-COVID syndrome or being a long hauler or whatever the case. So people are just more aware of, hey, I just have COVID, but now, I feel dizzy all the time. I have brain fog. Like I can hardly move my limbs. What is happening to me? I don't have let's say I don't have a sinus infection. I don't have a cold. I just went to the doctor. Everything's fine. I tested negative for COVID. What's happening to me? And those are the kind of situations that are happening. Another example of this is unfortunately I got a .com. So this is yahoonews.com. So this is Wendy French of Northwest Suburban Lake in the Hills. Used to run 10 miles a day, several times a week before she caught COVID-19 in September, which left her fatigued and suffering from a variety of symptoms for months after the virus has supposedly been gone. The previously healthy 45-year-old stopped running and even began dreading typical household chores, such as doing laundry, because it required standing up for a long period of time, where she grew tired. Now, one other thing here is take it as a grain of salt. This report mentioned that she felt better from these symptoms after taking the vaccine, but I have not seen any other reports that I looked up. So take that with a super grain of salt there. That was an interesting thing that I wanted to mention, but the amount of validity of that, I don't know if it really has much, at least at this point.
And see, I think aftercare is very, very important, because I know she feel better, but let's say she was one of the people who got the vaccine and felt worse. And it actually, or maybe she felt something, but then with the vaccine, it just amplified. I don't know. Then she might go and say, well, I got the vaccine, and I guess this is just part of the process of me just building immunity to it, right? Versus you kind of already had a headache, and that was part of post. That those were one of the few things for you to be aware of. So you're mixing it in, and now you think you have the vaccine, you're good.
Right. Or you're thinking the symptoms you're getting is because of the vaccine, really, but it could be because of COVID that you had previously. So,
Ms. Bri.
I'm definitely gonna take it with a grain of salt. I think it's great that the vaccine made her feel better, but the validity of that, I don't know. Like it's kind of like a 360. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a whole 360 turnaround. I don't know how to read that. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know how it can. Just from what I've learned about the vaccine, I'm not too sure what about the vaccine could actually make it be better. Because really what the vaccine, at least the Moderna and the Pfizer one does, it increases your immune system. So it helps you fight it, but I don't know if it actually helps you like eliminate it completely. If it's changing your cells or changing certain things, I don't know what can help that in particular. It just doesn't, with my non-medical degree,
my .com medical degree. Let's hear it, Doc.
My .com medical degree. It doesn't make sense. That's all.
Yeah, I think it's a mind thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like I feel better too when I drink that emergency. You know what I'm talking about, the air gun stuff. I was drinking those. I was like, yeah, I feel yes. Like I just drunk those shots, and then I had a headache because I didn't drink enough water. Like, hold on.
Yeah. Side note, I do want to add that, like, during COVID, I did see a documentary on YouTube by an actual medical professional. It was like a conference, like an online conference, how they said that they saw increased, I would say, I can't think of the word right now, but people were able to bounce back much faster through vitamin D and vitamin C, but mostly vitamin D, and consumed a lot of that. And some people even said that they took a supplement and they were able to, like, one person got COVID, but once they started taking more vitamin D, they felt better much faster. And again, there is a lot of power in nutrition and getting your vitamins and all that other stuff, but at the same time, the point of me even bringing this up is the fact that outside of the vaccine that she had got in this instant, I don't know what she's doing outside of that as well. You know, like, not only just adding to what Rissy Ray said, the power of the mind, but also what did you do on top of that? Did you get more rest? Did you drink your orange juice? Like, what did you do on top of that is not being recorded here? You know, that's what I'm curious about.
Right.
See, she messed up and just said I felt better.
Right.
So somebody either she was, I don't know, my conspiracy
I know.
like no other right now.
Well, I mean, a lot of different facilities are actually doing, I think they're still doing vitamin D shots. They used to do them last year a lot more, but actually giving you a shot, a full supplement of vitamin D, that I think it'll last you like a good either 6 months, I believe, where like you don't want to take any other extra supplements, it's just that one shot and you're good, because it just increases your immune system. That's like the vitamin D. So that would make sense, which is very interesting. I never got the vitamin D shot because I heard the needle was like super thick, and I was like, oh no. So
you said I'm good.
I'll wear my mask.
Thank you.
So with that, we are almost out of time. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to mention before we go into our final thoughts?
I'm gonna say mine for my final thoughts.
Okay, Bri,
do we have anything positive to say to people who could be a long hauler at this very moment watching this podcast?
So she has no ma'am.
Damn.
So unfortunately, there's a lot of things that we don't know of. I was looking at this Q&A that was on clevelandclinic.org, and it definitely it talked about like who usually gets it, who doesn't get it, but there's so many things that are still unknown because this is very new. If you are a COVID long hauler, or if you even just have things that are more of a lasting effects, definitely reach out for help. It's something that is becoming more and more prevalent in a lot of different people. Basically, from what I see here, the average age, just the question of what is an average age for the long hauler, it says at this point we can't determine the average age, or predict who may have long-term symptoms. They say there is relatively a mix of young, healthy people who are seeing in this long-term group, as well as older individuals. So the hospitals are working to analyze this data to be able to have a better research group to give some more ideas. So I hate to go back to what Rissy says, saying no ma'am, but they're working on it. So that's a great point, Bri.
I muted myself the entire time, right? Because I was like, I'm not going to be a negative Nancy today. Something I've had, but I was like, let me be quiet.
So we're going to move on just from that and go into our final thoughts. So Rissy, you want to go first?
Yes. I was looking for my phone actually, because I was like, where's my phone? And missing my dog's wrestling. I'm like, where's my phone? So Okay, 3, 2, 1. Awesome topic, Kaninja. I really like the fact that I love that we talk about topics that is not really mainstream, right? I did not know about COVID long haulers until we were voluntold to do so. Okay, so very great topic. My heart goes out to all the COVID long haulers because right now it's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of stuff up in the air, and I'm just yes, but you guys got it. And that's my 30 seconds.
Awesome. Bri, you want to go next?
Just to add on to Rissy, right? I completely agree with her. And I was going to say, I did learn a lot today because I didn't know either before this about anything about long haulers. But I think if you are one, just continue listening to your body, get your rest, talk to your doctor, get your vitamins, and you're going to make it. It's going to be okay.
You guys are so positive. So yeah, I mean, definitely. So I figured out this long haulers thing. This is very new. I watched some documentaries on it, and definitely we're talking to a lot of different people on it. So I'm glad that you guys enjoyed this topic. It is very interesting and something just to keep in mind. And I definitely love the analogies and the comparisons that we've made during our conversation today. And again, like if you are a COVID long hauler, reach out for help. If you see certain things, just reach out for help. This is the best that we can do at this moment, but they are trying to continue to research and what they can do better for those who are long haulers. So with that, be sure to comment on our Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter on what you feel about COVID long haulers. And thank you, Bri, for joining us. Also, like, comment, share, and subscribe on our YouTube channel somewhere around here. I think I'm pointing at Bri at this moment, but somewhere around there. Thank you all for listening in. Bye, Break Room Buddies.
Bye.
See you next time.